Bruna, Inamana, Inario, Inara Rangatirama, Tinakoto, Tinakoto, Tinakoto Katoa. Manawata a Matariki. We just wanted to acknowledge this morning that that it is Matariki, the celebration and the holiday that has just been introduced. So I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy celebrating it on Friday. But so welcome to the ordinary meeting of council this morning. Now, before we go to apologies, Amy, I think you'd like to introduce a new staff member.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Kia ora, good morning, councillor. I'd like to introduce you to Sean Royal. Sean is our new team leader, organisational support. It's her first day and she'll be working with our PAs and with Damien and Democracy Services to support your good self and to support your good self as well as go about our daily duty. So we'll be seeing a bit of you around Robinson.
Welcome, Sean. Okay, apologies. We have one for Alistair Gibson who's on leave. First online. I don't think we've got any other apologies. Would somebody like to move? Moved by Jeremy, seconded by Paul. Got it first. Sorry, all in favour say aye. Aye. Declarations of interest. I haven't been made aware of any this morning. Public forums, petitions, deputations. I'm not aware of any. Confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting of council for the 31st of May.
Jim, I'm happy to move it, although I do wanted to make a comment that a bit in there about acidification of land by pine trees. It's not clear. We discussed this and the commentary. This is on page 13 of page 10 of the minutes. I can quote directly from the Skyen report. I think is what should be there. Skyen report says the widespread belief that pine's lower soil pH is false. In fact, all forest soils tend to be acidic, indigenous New Zealand forests, deciduous forests, and conifer forests. At the moment, the commentary in the minutes suggests that that is not true. Pine trees do acidify for soils. They do, if you plant pine trees in a pasture soil, more acidic, but pine trees per se, pine forests per se, are no more acidic than any other kind of forest. So,
I'm just reading it. It says that you just proven by. I thought that was basically saying exactly what you said. You just think that's clear enough. But
well, it wasn't that clear to me, but if that's the way you read it and other people read it, then that's okay. But further on, it says noted that pine forests generally have more acidic soils than others. Pasture soils, that's true, but not other forest soils.
So, but it would read was simplistic to say that pine forests acidify the soil. There are many contributing factors. I know we do try to keep our minutes reasonably tight. I'm just guidance around the room. Do you think that's clear enough? Do you need any additions?
I'd be happy if it could be replaced with words directly from the Skyen report that I've read out. But if you think that's going too far, then
well, these are minutes that probably hardly anybody's going to read again, but
what minutes are for?
We'll get down to look at it perhaps to see whether there's would only be a minor wording change. Okay, anything further that needs clarification or change? Moved by Morris. Second for that motion. Phil, all in favour, say aye. Right, we'll move to the extraordinary meeting of the 29th. No changes or revisions. Would somebody like to move? Moved by Jeremy. Seconded by Phil. Further discussion? I will put the motion. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to item 5, which is the confirmation of minutes of committee resolutions. First up is Risk Insurance Committee of the 21st of June. Morris, would you like to comment on the meeting?
With that, independent chairs,
Oh, the independent.
and Linda was the
Linda, sorry, I've got it, we're on the wrong way. Linda works for years.
Okay, no, I'll take it as read, Chairman. Nice to get that underway and welcome Douglas. Hold, so I'm going to move.
Member Linda's seconded for that resolution. Seconded by Morris. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to the South and Civil Defence Emergency Management Group. Neville, would you like to comment on?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just take it as read. I'll just mention that was an exercise was held on the 21st of June, which actually it was a very testing exercise. But one of the purposes of that was to inform the mayors, particularly the new mayors, on the process for declaring emergency and the reasons, the foundation for actually declaring an emergency. And we think that went very well and they came away much better informed. It was also asked of me by another councillor if the training was available to other councillors. Training is available to anybody around the table here who want to receive that about emergency management. There's an exercise every 6 months and you're encouraged to come along and observe. You don't have a role. The roles are assigned by legislation about in terms of who can declare emergencies, but it would be good for you to know what the processes are. However, I'm sure the manager of emergency management, Simon Mapp, would be happy to give any councillors who have an interest an overview of the organisation, because it's all of the councils working together.
I would appreciate an invitation and next one.
I might talk to Simon and ask him to issue an invitation to the council here. Thank you.
It was a good meeting. I was there for part of it. Unfortunately, had to get off to another one, but I think that's a good point. When you do get to an emergency, it is sort of all hands to the pump, and if we have people who want to train and be put in a position to help out, I think that's great, and that stuff around deferring an emergency in the past some years that haven't known what to do. So I think being forewarned is really good. So that was a good meeting. I didn't get to sit through it at all, but it seemed to have gone very well, and the exercise seemed to have gone very well. Well, I'm happy to second that resolution since I was there for this part of it. Any further? No questions for Neville? I'll put the resolution. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to item 7, which is the notification of extraordinary urgent business supplementary reports or other. We do have a supplementary report this morning. So who do we do? We deal with that.
Resolution.
So we need a resolution to add it to the agenda. And it'll be dealt with in public excluded. So it's more to the end of the meeting. So somebody like to move in that direction? Moved by Jeremy, seconded by Peter. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to questions. Robert, I think we've got a couple of questions this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my first question I'll ask separately, perhaps. I'm interested to know, does the council's enabling of livestock farming in Southland conflict with our commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the region?
staff have obviously had a look at this, so the floor is yours.
So Bruce and I can exactly in the middle on this question and the second one as well, Councillor. So firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact we've had some recent changes to the legislation, which enables us to consider these matters slightly differently. So back in November last year, the Resource Management Act was changed, which gave us a stronger line in terms of enabling consideration of greenhouse gases. Previously, we had that power under the RMA, which had been rotating loophole for a while, but that's been changed now under those November changes. The second part I just wanted to acknowledge was more recent. Just last week, there's a new NPS that popped out. And had early eyes on, but it relates to greenhouse gases from industrial process heat, and that will work alongside the NES for the same level. So both of those pieces enable us to consider greenhouse gases in a more rounded way than previously, which will result in a broader consideration of both new consents, reconsenting, as well as through the plan change, which the NPS also requires us to consider climate change when we do our instrument changes, but that will then also filter down into our operational work planning and changes to how we use our education. On the specifics though around the second question, and
If I could ask the second question, and that was, does our enabling of coal burning at the Fonterra factory in Edendale conflict with our commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the region?
Chair to answer the specifics.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, I guess. We're enabling, we're considering any application in the context of our planning documents and relevant legislation that apply on. We might not take considering in the context of that. At the time that the previous Fonterra consent was considered in 2019, if you probably had a reading to the site, they had two borders installations on the site, one is closer to the old main road, one is southeast corner of the site, the other one is up the northeast corner of the site, which is the new installation. They have an existing legislative consent which expires in 2045. Under the new regime that issue looking to become operative on the 27th of July, we have this new environmental standard around industrial process heat, and that requires people who have fossil fuel fired industrial boilers, for example, so that when they're applying for a new resource consent, they have to produce an emissions reduction plan to show how they're basically going to transition now of fossil fuels to alternative fuel sources. And we have a requirement that we need to get that which was certified by the person. We're already doing some of this. We've recently granted, reconsented another boiler facility for another industry in Southland where the existing consent have expired. And as part of that process, they demonstrated a transition away from coal to an alternative environmental source. So this new national environmental standard, which is pretty new, was enacted on 26th of June and takes effect on 27th of July, gives us more power and focus to require that type of transition from the future. So that should assist us with the decision making and assist us towards both regional and national goals around some of those industries obviously have been quite public around their transition plans for transitioning out of fossil fuel. I'm not speaking much about obviously through the media around that from different industries.
I think through you, Chair, the only final point I would just make is obviously work advancing on climate change regional strategy as well to pick up any other elements of areas that need up. So maybe we should do that for us to do better.
Right, Mr. Chair, just another related point might be of interest as part of this new national environmental standard on greenhouse gas emissions for the industrial sector. Low temperature fossil fuel burning boilers become prohibited. So under 300 degrees, the lower temperature ones are the ones that quite often get associated with poor combustion and a lot of particulate matter being discharged into the environment. So they affect this health and the future. So I think that's a real positive for the environment and for the public health as well.
Thank you. Just a supplementary question back to Robert. The wording of enabling livestock. I know you're a prominent Green Party member. is there a party policy out there that is actively going to discourage livestock as part of the program? I think people probably have a right to know.
I think as a point of order, Mr. Chairman, I don't think you're allowed to grill the questioner at question time. And also,
It's a point of clarification.
I would be anxious about bringing political party promises or otherwise into the discussion, given the National Party's position on some of these on agriculture. So, if you don't mind, I'll defer.
Right. So I think you make a good point. We should stick to our knitting and not get into the political arena. Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I also picked up on the word enabling and both, Robert. I think they're good questions, but the word enabling in both of the questions, and Lucy used that word enabling. It's fair to say that we're in a regulatory picture situation and we've been neutral. We haven't been enabling. This may be just neutral.
For you to managing within.
I would wait.
Interpretive dance is required. For the health staff.
Livestock farming is not a prohibited activity, so people are entitled to apply to continue their existing livestock farming or to undertake new livestock farming, and we need to consider that in the context of our planning documents and also the national framework. In terms of their ability to consider greenhouse gas emissions through that process, good question. There's not a lot of national guidance or clarity around that. It did actually come up in a hearing last week where the Commissioner actually asked the reporting officer. In that instance, our recommendation was to decline a consent to a new farming activity. And the commissioners are considering that at the moment. No decision made as yet, but the Commissioner actually asked the reporting officer around that. We're probably lacking a bit of national guidance on which to base our thinking around that as compared to the industrial processing where we've got some clear national guidance now.
Thank you. We'll move to item 9, which is Chairman and Councillors' reports. Happy to ask any questions on meetings I've ended over the last month or more, couple of months almost there. Last night, or yesterday afternoon, both Jeremy and I and Peter actually attended a drop session at Nightcaps to talk about farm plans. So we had a small number of people who were asking very good questions as to what was involved, what were going to be the costs. Some of the questions we couldn't answer on the spot, but it was good to have that engagement and get out and be talking to people. There's no any questions, otherwise we'll call for any other verbal reports. Peter.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just like to say, attending that, it was a really good session. There was quite a few people there and it was quite good, the format of it. We had our staff talking. People were very engaged around the freshwater farm plans and where we're going and all this sort of stuff. So it was actually quite a successful event.
Lyndall.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of things. Councillor Morrison and I attended the Green Gold accreditation for Half Moon Bay School in Rapura last week before. And safe to say, I think that if you're feeling a bit down about some of the environmental challenges we have, visiting a school like that really can lift your spirits. Really inspiring young people who are enabled by the teachers and their leaders to follow lines of inquiry that are interested in and develop strategies, etc. They're a really cool bunch of people and really appreciate the school making the effort to accommodate us by extending their celebration for another half a day because we weren't able to go on the designated day. So our appreciation to them and congratulations to them because my background tells me how much work has to go into achieving that green gold status. So really really grateful for the opportunity and the privilege. And the other thing was that I attended the Mayoral Forum meeting on your behalf, but I need to update you on it before I share it. Thank you.
Cool.
Just to note that I gave a briefing to the Invercargill East Rotary Club on 26th of June. They were interested in the regional forum outcomes and how that would translate forward into, the water quality arrangements itself. So that was positive engagement. Well, Robert, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just following on, but a report of my own, my hikoi up to Canterbury to attend the 2-day conference Wānanga. I was representing the council in terms of the regional forum in a way, and that I was asked to go to the conference. It was very, very good. It was extraordinarily well attended. There were only 50 attendees, but they were, aside from myself, very high level, but from all sorts of all around the country. There were representatives of tangata whenua, particularly key figures in big projects around the country in Whanganui, Taranaki, Urewera, all sorts of incredible, as well as the Ngāi Tahu, key figures from the South Island as well. I was fortunate in being able to present a little bit about the regional forum and the effect of the inclusion, not the inclusion of, but the co-governance, I guess, aspect of the regional forum, and how effective and powerful it was for those community representatives, Pākehā and mana whenua, to be together and spend a lot of time together just talking, and the extraordinary result that eventuated from that. And I think that all of those people who I managed to speak to at the Wānanga were very quite moved by that example from down here in Murihiku. So I was very proud to have been able to carry the flag. I did my best in explaining how that worked, along with a whole lot of other things. Part of the Wānanga involved First Peoples from Canada, Cree, Indian, well, I can't really say Indian, can I? Mohawk. So it was really quite extraordinary. And I thank you very much for your support in that council. I think it was very, very valuable.
Thank you, Robert. I'll take, Eric's been waiting patiently, so I've got.
I'm just going to tell you that he was.
Okay. You go.
Thank you very much. I've attended a couple of conferences in the last while. About a fortnight ago, I was at the E-Tapu International Conference held in Christchurch about agricultural matters, and this last week at the Ag Summit in Wellington, which again looked at sort of pertinent issues around agriculture in New Zealand. My takeaway from both those conferences is it's been something of a paradigm shift towards solution finding rather than retrenchment of agriculture, and looking at methanotropes and bromoform, and when the Minister of Primary Industries, Honourable Damien O'Connor, said his government would be looking at the rules around gene editing so that some of these technologies could be applied, there's been a significant change. It's still got to happen, but for me it was quite encouraging that the move is to more solution bound than just postponing responses.
Thanks for that, Eric.
I was invited to attend a very small meeting at Norfolk Opportunities project last night with the field and community chair and a representative from Norfolk Opportunities. It was a good talk about where we are, where we're heading, trying to integrate Southland District Council as well as ourselves, listening and where are both heading. Also last week, when we heading home from our meeting, I called in at the Whitestone River, just above the bridge, noting all the diggers there for skimming, beach skimming in the Whitestone River. So I decided to have a look to see what action was happening. And at the time noticed a power pole exposed because of riverbank movement around about 10 metres from the last flush. The power pole was exposed where it was just sitting in the concrete donut in the bottom of the river. It was a town feed, so I initiated action through PowerNet, also Paul Pollard, and also Paul Hulse. And we are hopefully, the power pole was moved the next day. And hopefully we'll be getting some PowerNet will be rocking that portion of the riverbank. So that hasn't been completed yet, but very good result. Stop. I think the PowerNet guys said it was good that they could do it in fine weather on a Friday than the weather that was on the Saturday, whether it didn't fail. So good result for our town.
Thanks, Paul.
Going straight away.
Yes.
Any further verbal reports? If not, we will move to item 10, staff report, and item 1 is the chief executive's report. Wilma, would you like to comment on the comprehensive report?
Thank you very much, Chair, and kia ora koutou. The report landed at a time when a significant number of central government matters came to fruition and in front of us. So there was the presentation of the Future for Local Government report back to the public and to councils, and there were also the beginning and we are in tranche 1 of the rollout of the freshwater farm plans. We had the Water Services Entities Amendment Bill reforms, and also the report back from the Select Committee on both of the resource management reforms came out. And then subsequent, of course, to this report, we've had 2 further national environmental standards in front of us. So it's been a strong showing of work coming to fruition for us to actually get our heads around and to work through. So there's quite a lot going on in the organisation in relation to understanding what the opportunities and implementation matters might be in relation to all of those pieces of regulation, legislation and report back, and what it means for us as an organisation. So you've heard about some of that today from Bruce and Lucy, but there's a lot more going on in relation to all of these matters, including the future for local government. So the rest of the report reflects, I think, a number of matters that we brought before you before. So the communications work reflects some of the matters I've just mentioned, including the communication with the rollout of the freshwater farm plan implementation, also the matters that have been before us in relation to gravel and intensive winter grazing. The work in the science area, there's a report back in this about other matters that we raised previously, including understanding more clearly about the very significant bloom in Lake Te Anau in relation to the zooplankton and what that is, and that it is actually, that Daphnia is a natural phenomenon of a introduced plant, but it was at quite a significant state. So that's just an update for you in there as to what that means. There's an update too on the outcome of the testing that we did as a result of finding a landfill in the East Gore Stop Bank work, found high aluminium levels actually at that point. So we're going to be monitoring that on an ongoing basis to understand what the impact of that might be and trying to trace where it came from. Just to point a few other matters in here, there's the matters, I'm looking through this report here, matters relating to the Bluff Fallout facility, which we discussed a great deal with you previously. There's a lot of work going on between the Integrated Catchment Management Group and Southport to actually advance this project. We realise it's absolutely critical to the biosecurity work in Fiordland, and we're looking for a clear pathway through that with the hope of getting some partnership funding to assist us to actually get this built. Also recognising that the phase 1 of the Whakamanatawa Tuna project, which has been how many years in the making, Chair?
I guess we probably go back to about 15 or 16 with the actual trust being formed, but of course the Waituna work probably goes back to the 300th flipping quite some years before. But if that meeting, well, it's the end of the stage. It's not the end of the journey, but it's sort of the final meeting, the tidying up of the particular funding that we received. thought it was good. I got the ending to go to the next stage, but I think actually we're a bit modest in Southland. I think we should be leveraging a bit on the work we've done down there and
Yes, I think so
going back to the minister with video done. I think we could add a little bit more to it as an introduction, because I suspect we have been one of the more successful projects, and it's a multi organisational group, and all slightly perhaps different aims, but the central thing was common to everybody was actually improving the health outcomes in this and catchment. So it's been quite a journey. We had conversations about saying we've got much better in the process. First, we would start our meetings, and by the end of it, we lose a lot of people. Now we're actually getting pretty powerful.
Thank you, because this project is, as you say, Chair, it's just the first phase of this, which this was a real pilot for us as to how we would work collaboratively to achieve, a real change in the status of a critical water body. And so Whakamana Te Waituna continues, the chair continues to be the co-chair and of the trust, and the work and the partnerships continue. But there's a lot of learning from this, and so staff are working very much on how this actually starts to become, from those learnings, a framework for working collaboratively with our partner agencies, with iwi, with the community, to actually, expand this work across the whole of the Takiwa. So that's quite an exciting milestone, really, to have got here, and with great funding from central government to assist us in that process. So there's an update in here also on the other matters that have been of interest to council for some time, the gravel management, where we're at with our bathymetric surveys in relation to getting 3D modelling in Matoda so that we can continue to work on those stock banks. And a bit of an update on the climate resilience projects and the matter at Blue Cliffs that's concerning at the moment the real change at the river mouth there, and looking at the immediate risks that might be from some historic landfills there, but also the longer term issues that relate to the amount of gravel in the Waio that may be covered with vegetation and that flushing flows are not dealing to. So there's broader matters in there.
Robert,
Just a question about the historic landfill. It's a long way away from any community centre. What's out there?
So there is a settlement there, and there are probably sort of, when I call them landfills, I think they may even be, they're not hail sites, so they don't think they're actually landfills that had any status, but there's certainly places where things have been buried and there's been significant erosion on that coast where some of them have been completely removed, but there are still other areas that have been washed away. And so we've been taking we've been out there looking to see what if anything might be there in the way of contaminants on that coast. Yeah. So no, there are people there are properties there, and dwellings might be the better way to describe them. So yeah.
I suspect the historic dump site is not quite right. I think it's people who probably back in my days on the community board, when you actually had to pay to go to the dump site there, people have trundled out and thrown stuff over the cliff.
Yes.
So it appears to be, it's not in a hole, it's
down the side of it.
analysis is being made. But it is of a concern that spit that's been there for hundreds of years is eroding badly. And
Just speaking of my history from the area as well, then exactly what you said, historical dump site off the bank, trailer chassis, car batteries. Historically, it's been happening for a while. One other question just regarding the court, regarding the dredging in the Bluff Harbour, are we integrating any connectivity and testing of that stuff coming out of that's being dredged to check for any toxicity, to see how far it's travelled in or out or depth or anything, or nothing at all that we're not worried about it?
We don't.
It'd be a perfect opportunity.
No, I don't think we have, but we did consider whether that was a sensible thing to do. Yeah, no, we thought about it because we did want to look at the impact in the coastal marine area of contaminants coming from Tiwai.
A baseline would be.
Yeah, so that that work is a separate piece of work which we undertook with EHS and which we're expecting a report back from very shortly. Paul, yeah, because we talked about what we might look at in terms of what came off the ground there.
I don't believe it's part of the consent, that's a requirement.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, the Southport consent was a notified consent, went through quite an extensive hearing. There's a large suite of conditions, I can send those through to you. There's no specific requirement for the ongoing monitoring of the material that's being removed out of the main channel. But certainly the potential, the material itself was surveyed as part of the consent process, and the applicant had to submit information on what the nature of the material was that was going to be taken from the main channel and deposited at sea, sort of southeast of the channel and back to the Kiwi area. So it certainly was included in the decision-making process. They had to quantify the nature of the material. It's basically hard rock, most of it.
Oh, that's, but it was just more the opportunity and the connectivity to other projects that ES is doing. I just thought it might have been a perfect opportunity to have some small testing for some baseline so that next time we do it, we can do some similar small testing to see whether it's toxicity is getting worse or better.
The reporting that's being undertaken by EHS that Orma referred to is partly covering the effects in the Bluff Harbour area. So we'll get some intel out of that process, which is mostly complete through that unexpected.
Yeah, and it's quite comprehensive, yeah.
I've got Neville, Peter, then Morris.
Two things here. One is during the Meridian consent about 10-15 years ago, it was given that the mouth of the Waiau has, under its natural flow, has moved several kilometres either side of its current mouth. It's moved backwards, forwards, and stuff like that. And people, landowners down there are concerned about their properties then. The other thing I was going to ask, there's two national policy statements have just come out. I got an impression that they were not expected. Do we have any further ones coming out in the near future that we're aware of?
We were expecting the biodiversity national environmental standard, but the environmental standard on industrial greenhouse gas emission is well, I don't think we were expecting that. That was something that we did have a bit of a surprise about. I'm looking at Lucy. Hard to know what we don't know, isn't it? We know a lot though, usually, about what's coming.
Are we not getting any forewarning?
So through you, Chair, we didn't get any forewarning about the NPS for the industrial heat, as Wilma has just alluded to. We knew and have known for a while that the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity was coming. In fact, we've been expecting it since August, but that arrived on last week as well. In terms of anything else coming, we've got those of us who had to sign NDA and an even tighter group than the larger group of us that have signed NDAs have got early eyes on the first version of the National Planning Framework, which is part of the RM reform piece. So that is likely to land out in the public domain within a month, let's say in August. Once those of us who are providing feedback on that document. So that's that plus the RM reform bills coming for their second reading in the House.
On the horizon, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, who knows?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm just looking at page 41 under regional planning, second paragraph here. When the planning change to a policy discussion papers are being drafted, it's right at the end of that, in preparation for public engagement to commence in the next couple of months. Have you got any further detail on that, on the windows there might be around public engagement, or how that might play out? Elaborate on that?
Absolutely, and sort of reasonably well advanced planning on that I believe we may be talking to councillors about in the next few days. Are we not, Lucy?
This afternoon's workshop will touch on some of this, but hoping to be able to start communicating in the next couple of weeks with the national and chunk of further consultation. stakeholders in a different way and with the general public as well through these years.
And the purpose being of that to engage early on thinking around what the policy detailed solutions are to be, both with council and then with those who are, the interest groups in the community on those matters.
And so we'll get to a point reasonably soon where people can expect us to come to them. They can put it in their own calendars.
Yes.
Morris.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to bring up the LiDAR again. First of all, I'd like to say it's a very, very comprehensive report. Thank you very much. You have a lot of really good information.
Yeah,
there, very useful. I'm still having a bit of trouble with LiDAR. John gave me a link to the site, which was very useful, but as far as I can tell, you need to download other software and stuff like that to
I don't even know how to do it. First call I've ever had. I'm sorry.
You got to breathe.
Oh, it's from the police.
Whiskey's my choice next.
So I understand the council is working to make it more accessible and to apply to. Better go away with it. Apply so that it can be used, but I think, so hopefully that will improve in the future.
So councillor, can I just be clear, are you going to the LINZ site and having problems? Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll see what it is that you haven't got that you might need, but I'm assuming that LINZ requires some level of software capability to be able to download the data. Would that be what the issue is?
So through Chair, just to be clear about the question, so you've been onto the LINZ website and you can see the data, but is your question around what we're going to do with it next?
No, I think it's about how you actually can see. I think the council wants to interact with the LINZ data.
Yes, you should be able to do that via that website.
You can see examples of what you can see through, if you go through the LINZ website, it's all very fancy stuff, but then trying to access below on the tower and see where the hollows are and everything in detail.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else has tried. I think Phil might have.
I would like the link to their page as well to have a big play.
We might need to just do a bit of a demo on this.
Just through you, Chair, connected to that is the next part around what are we going to use the LiDAR information to model. So the LiDAR information in of itself doesn't give us modelling intel, but the website, I've been on there a couple of times to have a nosy, being that it's in a long time coming. So we'll make sure that we send out the link to it with some explanatory notes, but also if we do a bit of a tour through. Just note as well, we're using a different, we're testing internally at the moment the hazards portal, which is connected. So it might be worth bringing those two things back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, Lucy, might be worth doing a bit of a webinar on this one. I mean, like this lends itself to just a really simple work through a webinar so that you can get into it and make it work. That would be great.
We've been making good progress on it as well. I got the latest base report came through just yesterday. So when there have been windows of clear skies, they've been up flying the remainder. So.
I know when
See some difficulties. I'm not sure if this official gave thing, but Zane Moss was making comments about how it was rubbish, it was no good at a meeting recently, which surprised me. But there was accessing the data for the ordinary man on the street does seem to be a bit of a problem, and one of the benefits was that this is going to be open to the public, and I'm not sure if it's a LINZ issue or what, but it would be good to get some sort of report back.
I think we should. We'll discuss whether it's whose end it's at, but I think we might need to make sure that the LINZ interface for average users is good.
Yeah, I think that's probably a point that we need to work through as well, Chair, is around the usability of it and what its purpose is. I've had a number of nerdy people get in touch saying how it's wonderful and they're going to be using it for X, Y, and Z. So I think from a GIS perspective and its power from a modelling perspective, it's doing what we need it to. But
yeah, I think we can. Thank you.
Right, I've got Lyndall, Jeremy, then John.
Page 44. As you said, in the fast track application, Environmental Protection Agency paragraph, not necessarily into the gory details of our input into that, although I have been in and looked at the minutes and the application and all that stuff. Just interested in your thoughts on the process itself, and I'm not be on the spot necessarily, so feel free to come back to us, but I'm just wondering how our input, has it been as the opportunity been as comprehensive and as detailed as perhaps a not fast track process?
Yeah, can I just say everything that we've actually got quite comprehensive commentary in the minutes. I think there's and probably, I don't know, you can correct me, Bruce, if I'm wrong, but I think that we probably commented more than we might have expected we would need to comment in a fast track process. I think it's complex and quite, a serious matter, which is why it's before the EPA. I think the panel is grappling with some major issues and it's seeking assistance to get its head around those. We, I think, have gone, we've gone quite hard out to help in that regard. And so that's why I think if you look at our minutes on the website, there's quite comprehensive suggestions of ways forward and how we can help in that regard. I think they're trying very hard to bring that to a conclusion. And I think it's, they've got some matters that they really need to group up and get a handle on. So we're trying our hardest to be of assistance in that regard, probably beyond maybe what we needed to, but to be helpful.
Yes, and that's very clear because there's lots to read. But the broader process is what I guess I'm a little concerned about as far as is it fulfilling the intention that it was set up for? Do you think?
Commentary on the EPA, really? No, I can't really comment.
Yes, Jen, that's a good question. It's actually interesting to look at the projects that are coming forward, which are wide ranging. They range everything from wind farms through to there's a very major development that's in Auckland, what they call 7 megawatts, right? The development in central Auckland through to upgrading housing, through to a whole range of sort of things. So various entities are looking at the fast track process and opting to use this window of opportunity they've got to effectively use this alternative process as compared to going through the normal resource consent process. One key difference, I guess, between the two processes is the rights to participate, because if you have a major resource consent application that we notify or any other council notifies, then basically anyone can submit. Whereas the EPA process narrows the participation opportunity. You could say it also focuses that a little bit. So, you don't have people saying similar things. You maybe have 2 or 3 entities that are speaking on their behalf. So you can argue whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess one of the key aims of the process when the government enacted it, which was post-COVID, to try and stimulate socio-economic development and employment and that sort of thing, was to speed up these major processes. And at this stage, it seems to be achieving that, although they're now getting into a situation where we've got a major backlog of applications in the system. So the first ones have gone through on average in about 100 working days compared to the normal notified resource consent processes average out about 220 working days. So quite a big difference there. But like a lot of parts of our system, I guess it's starting to get pressured with applications exceeding resource possibly. So whether that'll remain, situation remains to be seen. And it is interesting seeing the reporting back on the RMA reform. They're also talking about running with some form of process similar to the current fast track process. So it'll be interesting to hear that.
Yes. Thanks, Jim.
We've got Jeremy.
Bruce. Just a quick question on, obviously, with the media attention on winter grazing, but at the moment, have you noticed any a few more applications coming in for things with winter grazing?
We're up to about 92 applications for activity registration and activities or consents themselves. Another one is the Land Development Authority. Most of them are moving through well within the required timeframes. We're still while Barra and Fargo, we run leading regions in terms of number of applications that we've received and processed. Nationally, numbers are low.
we've got a little bit of ability to come through around helping with that nationally. I think we're probably at the project end of the scale in terms of number of applications and also our scrutiny around intensive winter grazing. So that's where things are at the moment.
John,
Just page 43, thank you, Chair. Just really quick around the zone, then that we're talking around large scale use in the future. What effect does this have? Any effect on that, or
I don't believe so, but I think the dam safety assurance program is specific to those types of infrastructure. So I don't. You mean in the sense that there was wetlands higher up the catchment, or
well, if we're looking at building dams for wetland management, what we
Yes, sure. Yeah, it's a good question. We have had some low scale constructed wetlands consented so far, which has been good. Mainly in the lower regions of Southland. Been graded dams at this stage so far, so they haven't triggered any building requirements under the Building Act. But dams above a certain scale need building consent. Because of the potential, the retaining water, which has a massive weight behind it, and the potential for failure of a large dam could be quite catastrophic, because that. But so there's a level of scrutiny required around the technical robustness of them. One of that date haven't been a problem. I guess potentially if there was a large constructed wetland, for instance, and say an upper catchment area, and it was retaining large volumes of water, it would be likely to need a building consent, and would likely need to get chartered decision in the year. But the one that is one. Listen to that design, sure because there's obviously there's work even below the dam at risk of failure.
and resources around that. If we find that there's an uptake of the regional reform brings along, we do see some a rapid increase in dams being built. Do we have the resources to keep up with the?
Yeah, that's a good question. We can't currently contract our building consent functions to Environment Canterbury, which all the lower South Island councils do. The reason for that is to be able to process and issue building consents, you have to be accredited by IANZ requirements, which is, I've been and done that in a previous life. It's a very intense audit process with quite a lot of costs attached to it. So rather than each of the regional councils doing it, the lower South Island is all contracted to ECAM. So they have professional engineering staff who review those designs. So I guess if they got enough of them, they could be swamped. Some of the wetland design that I've seen to date has been quite well constructed, more focusing on low structures, but there is potential for that not to be the case in every instance. So I can't guarantee that there's not going to be a pressure point. Yeah, certainly a lot of pressure on professional engineer resources are quite limited.
I imagine the further up the catchment you get, the more challenging it would be.
Get me.
Right, I've got Robert and then Morris.
Jimmy, yeah, just with regard the movement away from engineering solutions to water management around the Rohi. The idea of a natural wetland presumably isn't behind a dam historically. There would be other processes holding wetlands in place, so to speak, and those wetlands wouldn't represent a threat to downstream communities and so on, simply because of the way they work. It seems like we're swinging back to that engineering way of thinking about things that gave us our straightened rivers and so on. Is there a naturalistic, I know there is a movement towards natural solutions to these things. Is this not in play here in Southland? Are we not holding that up as our exemplar, our way forward? And that would negate these concerns that you're raising here about large volumes of water being held behind dams.
I think it's a good point that probably needs to be effective to our strategic approach to wetlands, both maintaining the existing ones and any work that's done in the future around constructing wetlands. The current ones that we've seen constructed wetland lines would be involved in just because they trigger the requirement for resources. Like effectively out there promoting any particular approach or technology. Some things have been quite proactive in offering their services to assist people with constructed wetlands. I think that's the reason I've taken it. Raising a good point that it probably needs to be a range of strategies and approach and maintaining what we've got. So it's a good part of it, we're enhancing it, and alternative methods of building things. So we're looking for that.
And Mark, I don't know the exact words, but the inclusion of natural-based solutions from as part of a whole of river approach or whole of river catchment is absolutely part of catchment operations and wider, and wider thinking for the future as well. So we're currently exploring natural-based solutions as part of a part of catchment work as well. So certainly. We will, as an organisation, not only will we have infrastructure to maintain and look after it in a traditional sense, but we'll also have to incorporate other intervention solutions, natural solutions, as part of the whole of catchment. That will take us from now on to the next 10, 15 and 20 years. So it's part of the thinking.
Know that there's a field that mana whenua are very strong in Mātauranga Māori, and Phil will probably point out that the recommendations on wetlands from the regional forum are very strong, and this is where a lot of the thinking came from. So I'm just hoping that it's being kept front of mind.
Well, just a comment. Some of these stands would include Monowai and construction structures for Meridian. We'll still have the 4 metre or 20,000 litre permitted activity type thing, which a lot of the smaller interventions will fall into. But after that, they have to go for a resource consent process, and one of the ones like Waituna at the moment. It's a larger one. Some of the EV ones on their own site are larger. So I think it's for these things to work, if you're constructing them, you actually have to slow the water down so your sediment or nutrients drop out. But some of them don't have to be massive to actually achieve that. And from what we seem to be learning is that if you want to take out nitrogen, you'll have one structure. If you want to take out sediment and other things, your structures might be slightly different. But we are going to see more in the future, but good points, and because we are trying to create natural wetlands again at the same time. So. Who do we have? Oh, Robert, no, Morris.
Well, just to take that a little bit further, we've at our meeting back at Transport World a while ago, we're all very keen about building these wetlands, but and maybe people are thinking about just building a dam on a creek, and maybe a big pond or something like that. But really, to reduce nitrogen, reduce phosphorus, like you were saying, Nicole, or to reduce sediment, you need the dams need to be designed, or the wetland need to be designed very carefully. And that's why I sent out an email to everybody recently on an article in Atmosphere in the Niwa magazine about building wetlands. So I'm just wondering whether we all collectively as a council have a picture in our heads as to what is a good wetland, what it does, how it needs to be built, all that sort of stuff, and what can actually achieve. I'm not sure if we do. Maybe, dare I suggest that we have a bit of a workshop on this at some stage, so we have, people, experts in wetland design for particular purposes come in and talk to us, so we know what needs to be built, and we have a clear understanding of what is needed to get to a state of water and by waterways by building wetlands. I'm not sure if we're all on the same page as far as this is concerned. I second what you're saying.
And I think, it's it'll be the spring now, but obviously we've got wetlands being constructed in the Waituna area. But there are a number of other people around the things who have been constructing them. I'm getting cause of frustration with the NES actually being a bit of a handbrake for people doing the right thing. But I think it would be, I think there's something we should take forward and actually have a look, because there are different wetlands for different purposes.
Can we make a date for that? I mean, how soon? Because we want to get on with this. It's a big drive and a big feeling in the community for wetlands. Let's get it done. And if we just leave it for another year before we even talk, can we make a date?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. This is a.
Yeah, but some of the stuff we're going on, where like Waituna has been a test bed for things. So you actually have to ground truth stuff and be able to say, here's the science. This works for, here's the science, this one works for taking out nitrogen, this one's working for taking out sediment, phosphate, etc. So yeah, I sense the urgency, but let's do it. Yeah, let's do it in a way that we can.
Mr. Chair, through the regarding wetlands and our knowledge, we just need an overview to make sure that the wetlands are being created correctly. We don't need to be doing huge workshops on operation. I think we need to have some straight understanding that the process is in place through the staff and consents and everything are correct. The reasons are being created. It's just an overview as a councillor. We just need to know. We don't need to know down to every aspect of creation of wetland. We need to be reassured that the team are actively helping people put those wetlands in place correctly.
Thanks, Paul. Peter, then Jeremy.
Yeah, I just want to lend my support to the discussion and just what Paul said, you know, there was a key recommendation in the forum to establish the task force, wetlands task force. We established that, and that technical expertise that sits among that task force will answer all these questions. There'll be practical expertise and technical expertise. That needs to be our focus, as opposed to thinking our individual thoughts on what wetlands should be. And we should action that recommendation. That's the first way.
Jeremy.
Yep, just in regards to all this, I have asked months before in regard, when you look over the board of the Pomahaka Water Care Group, done quite a lot of and claimed quite some pretty interesting results in regards to their different traps, and I know Ag Research are doing the verifying stuff, so it'd be good to have that information here. We don't need to reinvent wheels either, so but we also it'd be good to see whether it's been verified, and they seem to be pretty simple setups. That's within the rural aspect. So we are talking about that. Let's look what other provinces are doing.
Lyndall.
Thanks, Chairman. Of course, you can go. Page 47, changing the subject. Catchment integration, and the fourth paragraph there about this sort of riparian planting project. Just wondering how that might apply in an urban setting, or a densely populated setting. I know this is mentioned stock, but actually, there are waterways that go through the city and through some of our smaller communities that, you know, do they qualify?
I don't believe that the programs is specifically rural, and in fact, I think we've referred to this Open Riparian Planting program as part of a really good outcome, that if we're taking trees down in the urban environment as part of our stock bank work, we've leaned on that program as well. So I don't see Fiona in the room to sort of answer specifics, but what I'll do is I'll confirm for certain.
I think it would be helpful if you know, urban communities know how to access that project.
At the moment, our target's 10,000 plants this year, and these are our subsidised ones. We've contracted out lots of 50, recommending perhaps up to 200, because they want to spread them around a wee bit. Hoping to pay my money and get a contractor, so I'm going to have 200 plants in by the end of the winter. Robert, you want to?
Thank you. Just further, very interesting to think about. Good on you for speaking up as a councillor representing the townsfolk, but the idea of riparian planting in towns and cities is just a lead-in to a rethink about how water is managed, particularly rainwater and so on, because at the moment it's channeled, drained and piped and disappeared. in other words, wasted. So there's a lot of, and we were talking earlier about natural processes, natural forms of managing water in particular. And the use of swales in a lot of cities around the world is transforming. As soon as you've got a swale, then you've got opportunity for actual effective riparian planting. That does something, not that just looks pretty.
Yeah, no, my point exactly, councillor. Yep, absolutely.
I'd like to see a lot of thinking, something being fed back to us to show that this council is moving in that direction with regard to the city in particular.
What we've got a great example of that, they had on the TV the other night.
Oh, did they? Ah.
It's a really good point. I think we've raised there, because we've got in that supporting landowners. It doesn't have to be landowners in particular to do planting and planting groups and people to get activated in the cities. So well, it could be anyone, groups coming together.
No further questions on Wilma's report. Would somebody like to move that we accept it?
I'll see him.
Moved by Neville, seconded by Paul. All in favour, say aye. We'll move to item 2, update on the staff delegations manual. It's very straightforward.
Changes just proposed to deal with 2 new roles that have been created in the planning team. They haven't been recruited to yet, but it's making sure that when they are, the staff have the right authorisations.
Moved by Jeremy. Seconded by Lyndall. No further discussion. I will put the motion on the table and say aye. Aye. Right. Item 3 is the council's meeting schedule.
We have a few changes to include in the Matariki celebrations at ES on the 10th of July at 8:30. Councillor Broadway attended. There's a Federated Farmers meeting. Not sure if it's going to be in person or just on Teams tonight at 5 o'clock. And we've also been advised of some groundswell meetings that are coming up. The councillors are welcome to attend if they wish. In Gore on the 25th of July at 7 o'clock, in Lumsden on the 26th of July at 1 o'clock, and Otautaua on the 26th of July at 7 o'clock.
We don't have a date. I think that Groundswell would like to meet with us.
Groundswell would like to meet with you on the 27th of July sometime between 9 and 12. I've advised them that key people won't be here, but they're happy to meet with others. So they've got that overnight.
Yeah, so there'll be likely a meeting if that go ahead, because we'll be at the audience and conference.
Just one minor modification, I was not at a Federated Farmers meeting on the 4th of July.
I think there's one or two things just needs like this, where people were there or weren't there, but it's.
That's not a problem. It's only a problem if you claim for something you're not actually at. That's why I try to track who's there. There's also the Great South Joint Shareholders Committee happening at 8 o'clock on Thursday, and there's an Aparima Farmers meeting at Riverton on the 17th of July as well, in the evening.
We've already got the hand up to that one. Lyndall.
Got my leave of absence, right? Yes, after you wanted it, the only three, this is just one. We've got Councillor Morrison's leave of absence request as well for the 19th of November.
And I also have a request for a leave of absence from the 25th of October, I think, to the 6th of the 7th of January. I'm trying to remember. It's back before the meeting, but the general meeting for that. Any further applications for leave of absence?
Hello.
You're moving. Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Morris. We motion on the table, say aye. Right, we'll move to item 4, the common field. Moved by Jeremy, seconded by Lyndall. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, that's public excluded. I'll return to the reasons for public excluded.
Moving into public excluded for the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of the 31st of May the council meeting and confirmation minutes of extraordinary meeting of council on the 29th of June, adoption of committee resolutions, risk and assurance committee of the 21st of June, item 5, local government New Zealand remits 2023, and supplementary report item 1, Mataura River True Right Bank rock lining approval. The reasons are the matters under discussion are before the Environment Court, and therefore council is authorised to deliberate, prevent the disclosure or use of official information for improper gain or advantage, to protect the privacy of natural persons, to allow council to carry out negotiations, including commercial and industrial, without prejudice or disadvantage.
Have you heard the reasons? Would somebody like to move in public? Moved by Myra, seconded by Phil.